Okay, so we are going to go ahead and probably do the first half of this, or at least the first couple slides, talking about some of the building blocks and maybe do our little activity here. So we're going to talk about here in chapter 2. It's chapter 2 for me. You guys don't have the book, so it's different for you guys. But the building blocks and barriers to intercultural communication in particular. So if you Google the 4 building blocks of communication, it will give you 4 different ones than the 4 building blocks of intercultural communication. I know this because I have that question on my final exam. And every semester I have at least 75% of the people who give me the wrong 4 because they Googled it instead of looking at their notes. And I always know that because it's like, when I Google that question, the first thing that comes up are the answers that people give me. But the basic gist of this is communication doesn't happen within a vacuum. So what that says is communication, there's always things going around while you're communicating. Things are going on. So there's always different situations and different contexts that are influencing how you interact with different people. So our 4 building blocks of communication that everyone always gets wrong are culture, communication, context, and power. So culture, of course, is pretty straightforward. So what is the cultural situation that you find yourself in? Is it American culture? Is it Mexican culture? Is it a specific subculture? What? Communication. So what is actually going on? How are people communicating? What is the context of the interaction? Are you communicating at school? Are you communicating at home? You know, with friends, with strangers, on an airplane, at a party? And then power. So how do people in this interaction view power? Who has the power in this interaction? So if we look specifically at this classroom situation, okay, most of us are, you know, America, we've been raised in the Southwest. Well, you guys have, I haven't. Communication, so what's going on? So we are talking. Well, I am talking and you guys are hopefully listening. What is the context? We are in an academic classroom context. And then who has the power? Here in the US, we're relatively equal power-wise, although I do have more because I am the professor in this case. But the way we view power is relatively equal. Like, you guys feel free to ask questions during class. You're not terribly intimidated by me. I hope. Maybe you should be. Just kidding. But we don't view power in the same way like people from China view power and power distance. And we'll get more onto those. So our building block 1 for culture. So culture as a whole is our learned patterns of perception, values, behaviors that are shared by a group of people that are dynamic and heterogeneous. So culture is learned, meaning you don't just get born and are immediately a cultural being. You have to be raised to it. You are taught how to behave in the society in which you grow up. So you're not born speaking English, or you're not born speaking Spanish, you're not born speaking Chinese. You have to learn that. It involves our perceptions and our values. So how we're raised shapes how we view the world. If you are raised in America, you are probably raised to perceive things through the lens of American exceptionalism. You probably have different values than someone who was raised in India or someone who was raised in Germany. So typical American values would be, you know, individualism, you know, like I am an individual. You know, I have the freedom to make my choices for myself. You know, a value could be family, like I want to provide for my family and therefore I need financial success. Culture involves feelings. So how we feel about different subjects is influenced by how we're raised. Culture is shared. So we have to spread and share our culture for it to keep going, right? You know, our parents raised us in a certain way, and chances are we will raise our children in a similar way to the way that we were. So we share it so that it can spread. So we teach it to others so that it can keep going on. Our culture is expressed as behavior. So the way you behave is shaped by your culture and how you're raised. So if you are LDS, your culture that you were raised in probably says that you don't have any tattoos. You might not drink coffee. You probably don't drink alcohol. But those are behaviors that come from the culture that you are part of. And it is dynamic, so it means that it's changing all the time. So new things are introduced into culture all of the time. And it's heterogeneous, so not everyone within a culture is the same. You know, not all Americans are the same. You know, not all people from Arizona are the same, even though, you know, that's like a regional subculture. You know, not all people from Canada are nice. You know, not all people from Quebec speak French or whatever. So does that make sense so far? And my watch is almost dead. So this is what we are going to finish off with today, like super short, but you know, think about your personal culture. So a lot of these things are things that, you know, we don't see on the surface. So you have your visible behavior that you show, and of course your invisible behavior that you know that you have. So that affects the way that you present yourself. So your visible behavior would be like how you talk. Do you speak with an accent? Do you avoid saying certain words? Do you avoid doing certain things or dressing in a certain way? And then your invisible or hidden behaviors might be like your attitudes and values and your beliefs. So those affect how you visibly show yourself, but not everyone can see, okay, well, this person has this belief unless they show it. So what are some of your guys' values? So what do you value? Do you value family? Do you value love, freedom, religion? What? What are some of your attitudes? So what are your attitudes towards certain topics? And those come from like your beliefs. So how do you believe that the world was formed or how it came about? You know, what is your beliefs on right and wrong? And then how do you visibly show these things? So any questions, comments, or concerns about this? And this is just something to kind of think about, like, who are you as a human? Who are you as a cultural being? You know, what do you do that makes you different and unique? And what does that say about you as a person?